They always said Los Angeles would go out in flames. Sometimes it felt like prophecy. Not long ago, before the sirens and the scramble underground, you could feel it in the streets, a kind of static in the air, tension, restlessness. People drove like they were fleeing something no one could name. Grocery shelves half empty, gas stations with lines stretching around the block, news anchors smiling too much on air, their eyes darting between teleprompter and incoming alerts. Something was coming, and we all felt it. I remember walking home after a double shift at County General, sirens wailing in the distance. Cop cars, ambulances, fire trucks, all at once. A protest had turned into a brawl downtown. People were shouting about conscription, about satellites falling from the sky, about which cities would go first. And still, no one said the word. Not until it was too late. My name is Dr. Alan Reeve. I've spent the last 17 years stitching up stab wounds, treating overdose cases, and holding pressure on gunshot trauma in an ER that never sleeps. I've seen people die in ways you wouldn't believe. But this is different. We're deep beneath Westwood, maybe 30 feet underground, in a decommissioned emergency shelter from the Cold War. It was supposed to be mothballed. It wasn't. Someone, somewhere, decided to keep it alive, and now it's home to 20 of us. Nurses, orderlies, 1 police officer, 2 engineers, a kid who doesn't talk, and people like me. People who don't know what we're supposed to do next. The night it all began, the emergency broadcast lit up every screen. Nuclear threat confirmed. Seek immediate shelter. Impact window, 24 hours. The message looped until the power grid above failed. Phones went dark. Satellites stopped blinking. And then came the silence. The kind that rings in your ears because your body knows something's wrong. Up there, beyond the steel doors and the concrete, Los Angeles is either burning or already gone. Hollywood, gone. The Santa Monica Pier, maybe swept away in a shockwave. I think about the patients I left behind. The homeless man in room 4 with pneumonia. The girl in ICU after a car crash. I don't know if they made it. I don't know if anyone did. In this bunker, we ration power, boil water, and play static-filled broadcasts on a loop, hoping for something, anything. I sterilize instruments I might never use, check vitals for people who aren't sick, pretend this is just another long night shift. It's the only way I know how to hold it together. One of the nurses, Carrie, found a radio frequency last night. Brief, garbled, something about Seattle, or what's left of it. We don't know what day it is, only that it isn't the world we knew anymore. And above us, the sky might already be ash. Before the first missiles were launched, before the cities turned to smoke and rubble, the world was already cracking. I remember sitting in the hospital lounge on my overnight shift, watching the news flicker on the wall-mounted screen. It had become a routine, one I never wanted but couldn't stop. Every morning, new footage from the Baltic, from the Taiwan Strait, from the Arctic. Every headline colder than the last. Sanctions, skirmishes, provocations, retaliations, nations drawing lines in the sand and daring the others to cross. And we all knew someone would. It didn't happen overnight. It was years in the making. Trade wars evolved into cyber attacks. Proxy conflicts became open battles. Treaties crumbled. one by one. The old world order, fragile as it was, collapsed like a house of cards in a storm. I'd hear it from my patients too. People weren't just coming in for chest pain or broken bones. They came in with anxiety, insomnia, panic attacks. There was this collective breath being held across the city. Some tried to drown it in work, in parties, in distractions. Others stocked up on supplies or whispered about safe houses in the desert. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. Something big was coming. I remember one night, a man in his 70s came in with a minor stroke. When I told him he was stable and would recover, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I survived the Cold War. This time we won't be so lucky." He said it with such calm certainty that I couldn't even reassure him. As the months passed, that quiet dread began to seep into everything. You could feel it in traffic, more aggressive, in supermarkets, emptier shelves, even in the silence between conversations. And then one day, the news changed its tone. It wasn't if anymore, it was when. The alliances fractured and the global balance tipped. First came the strike in Eastern Europe, then the blackout in Tokyo, the retaliation over the Atlantic. In a matter of days, dominoes fell across the globe. Supply chains collapsed, financial markets crashed, and major cities started to shut down. Not from viruses or protests this time, but from fear of incoming warheads. Los Angeles, this sprawling, shining symbol of the West, was suddenly no longer untouchable. Fighter jets over the Pacific, false alarms, real ones. Then came the evacuation orders. Not everyone got out. I stayed. I had to. I had patience. I had my oath, and to be honest, maybe part of me wanted to witness the fall, to understand it. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending everything was fine. And now, here I am, underground, speaking into this old radio like it's a lifeline, listening for any sign that someone else made it, that the world still has a heartbeat. Because when the world finally caught fire, it wasn't a surprise. It was a slow burn we all watched and ignored until it was too late. It was around noon when the emergency broadcast lit up every screen in Los Angeles. TVs in diners, phones in people's hands, massive LED panels on the sides of buildings downtown. The voice was cold, measured, and unshakably official. Attention. This is a national emergency. Intelligence confirms the likelihood of a nuclear strike on American soil within the next 24 hours. All civilians are urged to proceed to designated shelters immediately. I was in the hospital cafeteria when it hit. People stopped mid-bite. Phones dropped. Silence took over like a slow-moving fog. Then, chaos. I remember the woman sitting across from me. Her tray fell to the floor as she bolted out, screaming. Nurses tried to call their families. Some just froze. Even the doctors, the ones who are trained to stay calm in any crisis. We just stared at each other. I rushed to the ER. We had patients who couldn't move, couldn't breathe on their own, couldn't be left behind. But what do you do when the clock starts ticking louder than your heartbeat? I stayed for another hour, helping where I could, stabilizing those who might stand a chance if the worst came after the warning. And then I made the choice. The bunker wasn't mine. It belonged to a patient of mine, a paranoid man with too much money and too much time. He told me about it months ago, after a routine checkup. "Doc, when the world ends, and it will, you'll remember me. Just knock 5 times. At the time, I laughed. Now, I wasn't laughing. The roads were packed. Horns, sirens, helicopters. People were already looting gas stations, dragging children through crowds, shouting into phones that didn't have signal anymore. The sky, it looked too clear, too peaceful, a cruel contrast. I grabbed a few supplies, my med bag, bottled water, a photo of my daughter from my desk drawer. I didn't have time to get her. Her mother had taken her upstate weeks ago. I just hoped she was far enough away. By the time I reached the hills outside LA, night was falling, and the orange glow of the city behind me looked more like fire than sunset. I knocked on the bunker door 5 times, and it opened. Now, I'm here. A concrete room buried under the earth, surrounded by strangers and silence, counting down the hours and clinging to every crackling word from the radio, waiting for the world to end. Silence down here is different. It's heavy, almost unbearable. After the chaos outside, the sirens, the rushed orders, and the panic in the streets, this bunker feels like a world apart. The air is stale and dry. The lights hum softly overhead, casting long shadows on the concrete walls. Somewhere nearby, the old radio glows green, but all I hear is static. The city I've known my whole life is out there, Los Angeles. I can't see it, but I feel it, like a weight pressing down on my chest. What's happening up there? Is it still standing? Are people still alive? Hours ago, a general's voice came over the bunker intercom, clear, firm, but calm. Everyone needs to rest. I know it's hard, but staying awake, letting fear take hold, it only makes things worse. Lack of sleep will make you hear things that aren't there, see shadows that don't exist. We need everyone sharp, strong, and ready for what's next. I listened, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay on the cold floor, staring at the ceiling, feeling the hum of machines and the distant vibrations through the walls. My mind kept racing, memories of patience, my family, the city's bright lights now swallowed by darkness. The others here try to settle down. Some whisper quietly, sharing stories or comforting each other. Others stare blankly, lost in their thoughts. We're all strangers, thrown together by this nightmare. I tried to focus on my breathing, slow, steady. But fear lurks in every corner of this underground room. Every sound, a cough, a creak, makes my heart jump. Sleep feels like a luxury I can't afford. Because out there, beyond this bunker, time is running out. The war is no longer just headlines or distant news. It's real. It's here, and it's waiting. But the general was right. If we don't rest, if we let exhaustion take over, we lose ourselves. The darkness inside these walls will consume us, even if the outside world hasn't yet. So I close my eyes. I try to rest. Because tomorrow, whatever it brings, we'll need all the strength we can find. 1 hour remains, the final 60 minutes before everything changes. The bunker feels heavier now, as if the weight of the world above is pressing down through the concrete ceiling. The low hum of machinery fills the air, but it's the silence between the voices on the radio that hangs thickest in the room. The announcements are steady, precise, and merciless in their clarity. The government confirms the missile launches are expected within the hour. There's no room for hope or denial anymore. The threat is real, and it's about to become reality. Outside the bunker, emergency services have been mobilized to the fullest extent. Roads leading out of Los Angeles are congested with thousands trying to escape the danger zones. Mass evacuations, though chaotic, are ongoing. Emergency shelters have been opened and packed to capacity with civilians seeking safety, some calm, others frantic with fear. Inside, hospitals have cleared out non-critical patients to make room for the expected casualties. Medical teams prepare for the worst, running through protocols for mass trauma care. I keep my medical bag close, knowing that soon it might be the only thing between life and death for some. The city I've known all my life, the sprawling urban landscape, the lights of downtown, the quiet streets of my childhood neighborhood, is now a marked target on classified maps. Military strategists are racing to deploy interceptors and missile defense systems, but even they speak cautiously about their chances. Voices over the radio remind everyone, civilians must remain calm, stay in shelters, and follow official instructions. Yet calm feels impossible to summon. Anxiety twists in my stomach, gnawing at every thought. I glance around the bunker, faces etched with exhaustion and fear. People clutching onto memories, photos, whispered prayers. We're strangers united by circumstance and the grim countdown. I check my supplies again. Water, first aid, whatever small comforts I packed in haste. It feels trivial compared to what's coming, but it's all I have. The minutes crawl. Each tick of the clock amplifies the silence. The waiting stretches, a thin line between what was and what will be. And somewhere, above this concrete shell, missiles begin their deadly journey. At 4:12 a.m., the ground began to tremble. It started like a low murmur, barely a vibration in the soles of their feet. But within seconds, it escalated into a full-blown seismic wave. Dust fell from the steel beams of the bunker ceiling. The lights flickered, and then came the sound, deep, guttural, and rolling like thunder inside a canyon. Every person in the shelter froze. They all knew. This was it. Above them, the city of Los Angeles was breaking apart. The first confirmed strike hit downtown Los Angeles. Observers monitoring satellite feeds described the flash as a blinding white flare that momentarily outshone the sun, even in the pre-dawn sky. The impact zone, centered near the civic core, instantly vaporized City Hall, the courthouse, and blocks of surrounding infrastructure. What was once the beating heart of city government became a glowing crater. Shock waves shattered windows as far as Pasadena. Only 3 minutes later, the second missile landed near LAX. The blast obliterated the airport and surrounding neighborhoods. Flames surged hundreds of feet into the air, followed by a mushroom cloud that stretched over the coast. The airspace, already shut down hours earlier, was now nothing but dust and silence. The third and most devastating hit came at Santa Monica, targeting a suspected military facility hidden near the shoreline. Though civilians had long speculated about secret bunkers beneath the cliffs, the strike left nothing to confirm or deny. The pier, the beach, and the vibrant city that once embodied California's calm now burned, sending a wall of fire and debris into the ocean. Back in the bunker, the earth rocked with each impact. Walls groaned, a few children cried, someone vomited, and then silence. Not outside. Outside, the sky was surely screaming, but inside there was only stunned stillness. I slid down the cold wall, arms wrapped around my knees. Dust stuck to my sleeves, my skin, even in my mouth. Across the room, I could see the nurses, silent, pale. 2 families huddled near the storage cabinets, holding hands, eyes wide and hollow. One of the elderly patients kept whispering a prayer, over and over like a broken record. I didn't have the strength to say anything, but the words echoed in my head anyway, heavy and terrifying. It's happening. And somewhere in the distance, from above the layers of concrete and steel, a second tremor rolled in. Not another missile, just the echo of a dying city. Los Angeles, as they had known it, was gone. They said it was safe to go up. For now. No new sightings, no new descents. Just silence above ground. Too quiet to be comforting. The soldiers opened the hatch just after dawn. A metallic groan echoed down the stairwell, and a strange light poured in. Not quite sunlight, but something dull and tinted with gray. I climbed out behind one of the medics, blinking hard as the city slowly revealed itself, or what was left of it. Where the clinic had once stood, now there was only twisted steel and rubble. The building directly across the street had collapsed entirely, reduced to a pile of concrete slabs and rebar. A fire hydrant gushed uselessly onto broken asphalt, the water carving a red stream through dust and ash. I couldn't see far. The air was thick, fogged with smoke or some kind of residue that shimmered faintly in the light. We moved in a tight group, surrounded by soldiers with rifles raised. The street was lined with cars left mid-turn or crashed into poles, doors flung open, belongings scattered. A child's sneaker lay in the center of the road. I couldn't look at it for more than a second. Further down, the skeleton of a department store smoldered, glass shattered everywhere. A billboard hung sideways, barely attached to its frame. It used to advertise an energy drink. Now it was scorched black, half melted. "Downtown's gone," one soldier muttered through his radio. Echo team confirmed it. Whole blocks. Nothing left but holes. I asked him what kind of holes. He didn't answer. The others from the bunker emerged one by one. Some gasped, others fell to their knees. One of the nurses clutched a scarf over her mouth and sobbed quietly. I kept scanning the sky. No ships, no movement. Just clouds, torn apart in long trails like vapor had been sliced through them. I didn't feel relief, just emptiness, the kind that makes your bones cold. Whatever this was, whatever they were, it wasn't over. This was just an intermission. And I couldn't help but think, if this is what Los Angeles looked like, what about the rest of the world? We were moving cautiously through the shattered remains of Griffith Park, the once green hills now scorched and silent. The cracked paths were littered with debris, the skyline of downtown Los Angeles barely visible through the thick haze that hung low over the city. The convoy slowed as a soldier pressed a hand to his earpiece. Moments later, he turned and announced quietly, "The plane's landed." That caught everyone's attention. An elderly woman whispered, "What plane?" "The Doomsday plane," the soldier replied. "It touched down safely in Washington, D.C. 20 minutes ago. The president is alive." The words hung in the smoky air like a fragile lifeline. Whispers spread among us, cautious and desperate. Within 2 minutes, the static on a military receiver nearby gave way to a sharp tone. And then a voice. It was him, the president. I'll never forget how his voice cracked on the first sentence, raw with emotion, heavy with exhaustion. He didn't sound like a man behind a podium. He sounded like someone who'd been watching everything from above, helpless, furious, mourning. "My fellow Americans, we've endured the unimaginable," he began. He didn't offer empty reassurances. No vague comforts, just truth. He spoke of the cities lost, the millions displaced, the brave souls who stood their ground, and the silence that had followed. And then he said it, clear as day, with the kind of weight only grief and fury can give a man. This atrocity will not be forgotten, and those who orchestrated it will not simply be found. They will be punished, severely. They will pay enormously, irrevocably, for what they've done to us. His words landed like thunder through the radio's battered speaker. For a long while, none of us spoke. We just stood there, wind brushing against our faces, the world quiet and broken. But in that moment, something shifted. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. The air was thick with uncertainty. Even after the president's voice faded from the radio, the weight of what had happened and what was yet to come settled heavily on us all. Los Angeles was scarred, and the rest of America was watching, waiting, holding its breath. There was no sugarcoating it anymore. The attack was real, devastating, unprecedented in scale. The calm that followed was not peace. It was the uneasy silence of a nation on edge. As a doctor, I saw it in every face I treated, every patient I comforted. The fear, the disbelief, the quiet rage simmering just beneath the surface. Families torn apart, communities shattered. but also something else, something stronger, a resolve that burned bright despite the darkness. I listened to the stories shared in hushed tones inside the bunker, memories of loved ones lost, of neighborhoods erased, of futures stolen. Yet beneath those stories was a steadfast promise, whispered and shared alike. America will remember. This was not just an attack on buildings or infrastructure. It was an assault on the spirit of a people. But that spirit, resilient and fierce, was far from broken. We are a nation forged through adversity, tested time and again. And though the ground beneath us trembled, though the skies rained fire, the heart of America beats on. The question now is not if we will recover. It's how and when. Outside these walls, the world has changed. But inside, the fire of determination refuses to die. We may be shaken, we may be scarred, but we will never forget, and we will never surrender. Silence has settled over the ruins, but it is not the silence of peace. It is the quiet that follows a storm, a pause filled with shadows and questions no one can answer yet. The path forward is uncertain. What lies beyond this moment remains unclear. We have lost much, more than words can hold. Yet amid the rubble, something endures. It's the memory of those who stood firm, who refused to yield when everything seemed lost. It's the unspoken bond between strangers forced to rely on one another, in places like this bunker beneath Los Angeles, far from the broken world above. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know how long it will take for light to return, or if it ever will fully. But I do know this. Survival is more than just living through a moment. It is about carrying the flame forward. And so, with every breath, every heartbeat in this underground refuge, we hold on to that fragile ember. Because sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in the certainty of the future, but in the courage to face it, whatever it may be.
Out there, yes, clear. Loud and clear.
Pacific. 4423 live, we'll get the mobile station.
America. C7?
Yes, ma'am, we'll be clear, and 233 will be clear on it, and for E. Edward, and so we'll both be efficient.
This is Aaron Reyes, broadcasting from what used to be the heart of San Francisco. If this signal reaches anyone beyond the Pacific, know that this city is still here for now, and so am I. As of 1752 Pacific, the emergency channels confirmed what most of us already feared. Multiple launches detected across the ocean. No official list of targets. But no one in this city doubts we're on it. The Golden Gate City has always been a beacon of commerce, of innovation, of everything that made the West Coast feel untouchable. Tonight, that beacon feels like a bullseye. I never imagined San Francisco silent. This city was all sound. Streetcars clanging, tourists laughing, the endless hum of traffic rolling across the bridges. Now it's only wind. Wind and the groan of metal in the fog. The first sign wasn't a siren. There haven't been sirens here in weeks. It was the blackout across the financial district. One moment the skyline was alive, the next, black glass and ghosts. After that, people stopped pretending this was temporary. Those who could leave, left. Bridges jammed for hours, ferries crammed with families clinging to their pets and backpacks. Oakland became a funnel. After that first exodus, the city felt hollow. Chinatown closed. North Beach went dark. Fisherman's Wharf emptied like a tide pulling back for the last time. I stayed. I couldn't leave. Not because I'm brave. I'm not. I'm just a voice with a transmitter and nowhere else to go. The streets above me are quiet, but you can still feel the city holding its breath, waiting for something it can't stop. From down here, in this concrete bunker 2 blocks from the Embarcadero, the world feels like it's already underwater. Thick walls, old steel doors, the smell of rust and wet stone. I hear the generator more than I hear my own heartbeat. I'm going to stay on this frequency until it ends. However it ends. Because someone should speak for this city before it goes silent. Not the polished statement, not the filtered headline, but the voice of someone who walked these streets and loved this place enough to stay. If anyone is out there, remember this. San Francisco hasn't fallen yet, and tonight, it still speaks. Down here, time feels different. There are no windows, no sunrise, no skyline to remind me that a city still waits above the concrete. Just walls, thick and cold, pressing in like the weight of the Pacific itself. The generator hums in the corner, a fragile heartbeat in the dark. Every few hours, it coughs, and my own pulse stumbles with it. If it dies, this place becomes a tomb. The air smells like metal and damp concrete. It tastes old. Sometimes I imagine I can smell the ocean pushing through the cracks, the salt and the rot of a city waiting to drown in silence. Sound travels differently underground. Every drip of water sounds like a whisper. Every shuffle of my boots on the dusty floor feels like thunder. Once, I heard something scrape across the far wall. A rat, probably. But it froze me in place for a full minute, holding my breath like silence was armor. I set up my radio on an old steel shelf, next to the last of my canned food. There's no routine anymore, but I still pretend there is. Wake, check the transmitter. Listen to static. Take notes. Speak into the void. Eat. Repeat. Down here, pretending is survival. I talk to the walls sometimes. I tell them about the city they're protecting, the bridge lights I used to watch from the pier, the smell of sourdough in the mornings on Market Street, the way the fog would curl around the Transamerica Pyramid like it was guarding it. I tell these walls because no one else is listening. At night, the bunker feels alive. Pipes groan like they're mourning something. The concrete shifts with the echo of distant vibrations. Ships in the bay, or maybe something worse. I never know. The city speaks in murmurs now, and I am the last one translating. And yet, in this silence, I find myself listening harder than I ever did above ground. Every hum, every drip, every flicker of the radio feels like a message, and I wait for the one sound I fear the most. The deep, distant roar that will mean my city, my Golden Gate City, has finally met the sky. I'm still broadcasting from the bunker beneath San Francisco, and tonight, there is no more uncertainty. The attack is coming. At 2113 Pacific, the emergency command frequency switched from standby to continuous alert. No static, no hesitation. Just a voice, flat, mechanical, certain. Confirmed inbound. Impact expected. Prepare for containment. No city names, no countdown, no emotion. But everyone here knows what that means. The Golden Gate City is no longer waiting for if, only when. I can feel it in the air down here. A pressure that isn't just fear. It's the weight of a city holding its last breath. Above ground, the preparations began hours ago. The streets that were already half empty are now a funnel of armored trucks and flashing lights. I caught a glimpse from the stairwell camera before sealing the last hatch. Military convoys rolling along the Embarcadero, their tires whispering through fog, headlights cutting through the darkness like knives. Every bridge is locked down. Golden Gate, Bay Bridge, Richmond, all sealed, guarded by silhouettes with rifles, scanning the water as if an answer might rise from it. The city has changed in ways I barely recognize. It is not a home anymore. It is a fortress. The ferry building, once full of tourists and farmers' market stalls, is now a checkpoint. Civic Center is wrapped in barbed wire. Helicopters sweep the shoreline, slow and deliberate, like predators circling prey. The streets echo with the occasional voice through a loudspeaker. Shelter. Remain under cover. Follow posted instructions. But most of the time, there is only the wind. They say 70% of the city is gone now. Evacuated across bridges, ferried to inland shelters, crammed into temporary camps and forgotten hotels. 70%. And the rest of us are buried like seeds under the concrete, hoping we never have to bloom into daylight again. The bunkers are overflowing. I know because I can hear them through the radio network. Not words, but the thrum of humanity packed together. Children crying in echoes, a metal door slamming shut, the low hum of air filters straining to keep hundreds alive in places designed for dozens. Some of these bunkers weren't finished. I've heard reports of people standing shoulder to shoulder, their only comfort a thin mask, and the belief that concrete will keep the sky away. In my bunker, it is quieter. I am alone, but I imagine the weight of all those other lives pressing against mine through the airwaves. Every person down there carries a story, someone they couldn't reach, a home they had to abandon, a final message left on a voicemail that will never be heard. And yet, the city is not dead. Even in these last hours, it moves with a mechanical kind of determination. The water cannons on the bridges have been primed, not for fire, but for debris. Sirens test in short bursts, warning only those who are still listening. Drones glide silently over the skyline, tracking what no human eyes can follow. Somewhere deep in the Presidio, command posts hum with quiet voices, moving imaginary pieces on a board that no longer has winners. I've heard they're calling this Operation Containment, a polite name for surviving the unthinkable. They are not trying to save the city anymore. They are trying to keep the ruin from spreading. From the edge of this bunker, I can almost feel the city's pulse slowing. Every creak in the walls sounds like the sigh of an old ship. Every gust through the ventilation shaft is a ghost brushing against my neck. Somewhere above me, the fog curls along the Golden Gate like a final shroud, and the towers of the bridge wait, silent witnesses to whatever comes next. I keep telling myself I'll stop broadcasting when the first shockwave hits. But I know that's a lie. If the world goes dark tonight, I want someone, somewhere, to hear a human voice as it happens. The attack is coming. The city is sealed. The bunkers are full. And this is my record, my testimony, before the sky finally opens. This is Aaron Reyes, broadcasting from the Golden Gate City, counting down the final hours of a place that refused to go quiet. If the clocks are right, we have 10 minutes left. 10 minutes before the sky tears open. 10 minutes before this city, my city, becomes another whisper in the dark. It's strange. In these final moments, I'm not thinking about the headlines or the warnings or the maps smeared in red. I'm thinking about life before all of this. I remember mornings on Market Street, the smell of fresh bread from the corner bakery mixing with the salt of the bay breeze. I remember the cable cars climbing their stubborn hills, tourists hanging from the rails with wide eyes and wider smiles. I remember the way the fog would slide across the Golden Gate like a slow tide, hiding the world in soft gray before letting the sun break through. Back then, the loudest sound I worried about was a seagull stealing someone's lunch on the pier. I remember laughter, the easy kind, the kind that fills a street without asking permission. I remember music in the parks, the clatter of skateboard wheels, the ringing of bicycle bells. All those small sounds that told you a city was alive, that people were here, moving, breathing, believing in tomorrow. Now it's just the hum of my generator and the static of a world unraveling. And yet, there's something in that static. A rhythm, maybe. A reminder that someone, somewhere, could still be listening. If you are, if this voice reaches you even after I'm gone, I want you to know something. San Francisco wasn't just glass and steel. It was hope. It was the dream of building a life at the edge of the ocean, where the land runs out but the possibilities felt endless. And even in these last minutes, that dream is still here. I can feel it in my chest, faint but real, like a lighthouse blinking through the fog. If the city falls tonight, remember this. We were here. We loved. We laughed. We tried to hold on. And somewhere in this darkness, a spark is still waiting to catch the wind. 10 minutes. Maybe enough to remember. Maybe enough to hope.
Clear, and 233 will be clear on the end for E. Edward, and 2 with both W50.
If you can still hear me, the sky has finally broken. It started as a vibration, a deep hum that rose from the concrete floor, crawling up my spine. The generator stuttered, the lights flickered, and for a heartbeat I thought it was just another tremor. Then came the roar. It wasn't like thunder. It was bigger, heavier. The kind of sound that doesn't just fill the air, it presses against your bones. The whole bunker shivered, dust falling from the ceiling like dry rain. Somewhere metal screamed, pipes twisting, bolts straining, as if the earth itself was protesting what was happening above. I pressed myself against the cold wall, and for a moment, I swore I could hear the city dying. Not the sound of buildings collapsing. Not yet, but the echo of everything that once was, tearing itself apart in the air. A vibration that carried memory and fear in equal measure. Time broke apart. I don't know how long the first shockwave lasted. A second, an hour, forever. Every heartbeat stretched until it felt like the last one I would ever have. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of metal, like the city itself had turned into smoke and found its way inside my lungs. Then came the silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the world had been emptied of sound. I realized I was holding my breath, afraid that even breathing would break the fragile pause between impacts. And then, the second wave. Lower, angrier. The walls trembled like they might fold, and I curled tighter into the corner, eyes closed, listening to the long, endless seconds that refused to end. Down here, in the dark, I lost all sense of time. Was it minutes? Hours? Or just one single, infinite second? The moment a city became history? When the shaking stopped, I didn't move. I couldn't. The world above me had changed forever, and all I could do was listen to the ringing in my ears and wonder if anyone, anywhere, was still left to hear this voice. I waited hours before opening the hatch. The air was thick with dust, and every step up the stairwell felt like walking into another world, one that shouldn't exist. San Francisco, my Golden Gate city, is gone. The skyline I knew by heart is broken. The towers of downtown are jagged teeth against a dead sky, their windows blown out, their steel frames bent like soft clay. The Golden Gate Bridge still stands, but it is silent. No cars, no voices, just a ghost of orange in the gray, draped in the smoke of its own city. The bay itself is black with debris, carrying pieces of the life we once had out toward the horizon. The streets are unrecognizable. Blocks where I used to walk are flattened into rubble and twisted metal. Cars sit frozen in intersections, their windshields cracked, their doors open, as if the people inside tried to run but never got far. Every few steps, the wind shifts, and the dust clears just enough to see pieces of yesterday. A crumpled street sign, a burned backpack, a bicycle with no rider. It is so quiet. No sirens, no voices. Even the birds are gone. I keep thinking of the people in the bunkers, the ones who made it through the fire and the shaking. Somewhere beneath my feet, they're breathing the same poisoned air, wondering if there's anything left to come back to. I want to tell them the truth. I want to say the city survived, but it didn't. Only the bones remain. And yet, as I stand here, surrounded by ruin, there's a strange kind of peace. The city isn't screaming anymore. It's sleeping. And maybe someday, someone will wake it again. If anyone hears this, know that San Francisco fell, but not in silence. We spoke. We remembered. And somewhere in the ashes of the Golden Gate, hope still flickers, waiting for a new voice to rise. For the first time since the sky fell, I'm not the only voice in the dark. An hour ago, every surviving radio frequency in the country went silent at once. Then came a single tone, long, sharp, impossible to ignore. And after that, the voice of the President of the United States. It wasn't the polished, confident tone I remember from old press conferences. This voice was raw, steady, but heavy with the weight of loss. And yet, beneath it all, there was steel. "My fellow Americans," he began, "tonight our nation has endured an unspeakable act of war. Cities have fallen. Lives have been stolen. The skyline of San Francisco, a symbol of hope and progress, has been scarred in ways we will never forget." There was a pause, just long enough for the words to sink in. Even down here, buried under concrete, I could feel the gravity of that silence. "Let me be clear," he continued, the words cutting through the static. "The nation responsible for this attack, for this atrocity, will be held accountable. They sought to break us. They sought to erase us. But they will only succeed in uniting us. And as long as the United States stands, no act of aggression will go unanswered." His voice grew harder, colder, the way steel rings when struck. "To those who carried out this strike, know this: we will find you. And when we do, your nation will cease to exist. There will be no refuge, no shadow deep enough to hide in. The world will remember tonight not as our end, but as yours. Even through the crackle of the transmission, I could hear the distant echoes of history in his voice, the kind of moment that would define an entire century. To the people of this country, he finished, softer now but unyielding. Do not lose faith. Do not surrender to fear. We will rise from these ashes, and those who tried to bury us will learn the price of their mistake. Then, silence. No music. No anthem. Just the hum of the radio returning to static. Down here in the bunker, I felt a chill crawl over my skin. Because for the first time, I realized that this night, the night my city died, was only the beginning. I am still here in the bunker beneath San Francisco. And after the president's message, something shifted. I've been listening to the channels, to the voices trembling in basements, in shelters, in crowded bunkers. For the first time in weeks, there's a new sound beneath the static. Hope. People are talking, not just about fear, but about strength, about fighting, about surviving, about a nation that refuses to break. From every corner of this fractured country, I hear it. Whispers turning into shouts. A community rebuilt on courage. Neighbors sharing what little they have. Strangers standing shoulder to shoulder. Families holding fast to memories and promises. The president's words aren't just a broadcast. They're a lifeline. A call to arms, not just of weapons, but of will. And the people answer. In the darkest hours, the American spirit burns brightest. From crowded shelters in the Midwest to the shadowed streets of the coasts, radios crackle with determination. Messages of solidarity flow through encrypted channels. Songs are hummed in the quiet, stories told in whispers, laughter shared despite the dust and danger. It's not naive optimism. It's defiance, a refusal to surrender to the silence. Here, in the heart of a shattered city, I feel it too. The spark that keeps us breathing, the strength that turns despair into resolve. We are more than a city, more than a skyline. We are a people, unbroken. And as long as even one voice remains, hope will never be lost. This is Aaron Reyes, signing off, for now. If these words survive the darkness, if someone somewhere still listens, remember us. Not as victims, but as witnesses. As people who faced the end with open eyes, who spoke when silence was easier, who carried hope in the ashes. The city beneath my feet may be broken, and the skies above may be heavy with shadow, but the spirit of those who lived here that cannot be erased. In every quiet corner of the world, stories like ours are waiting to be told. In every voice that refuses to fade, a new dawn begins. So when the lights finally return and the streets fill again with life, know this: we were here, we endured, we survived. And beyond the silence, there is always a tomorrow.
South MPS clear. Loud and clear.
Pacific. 4423 live. Look at the mobile station.
On the intercom. C7?
Yes, ma'am. We'll be clear, and 233 will be clear on it, and for E. Edward, and so we both be a 50.
I was at work that morning in October. In aviation, mornings are always busy. The sound of engines, the scent of jet fuel hanging in the cool desert air, the steady rhythm of checklists being ticked off. Outside, the Nevada sunrise poured gold across the tarmac, lighting up the mountains in the distance. Everything felt routine, predictable, safe. We were going over the day's flight schedule, talking about departures and arrivals at McCarran. A couple of co-workers were joking about weekend plans, others sipping coffee, half listening to the radio chatter from incoming flights. For a moment, I let myself believe the world was just another ordinary place. And then, it happened. The monitors in the operations room flickered. First, it was just a glitch, a flash, a quick static buzz. But then, every screen went black. Flight data disappeared, replaced by a blank field and a piercing tone that made my heart race. We looked at each other, confused. The tone cut out, and the emergency alert system logo filled the screen. My skin prickled. All communications are to be suspended. Stand by for official transmission. The voice that followed was steady, almost too steady. This is an emergency message from the United States Strategic Command. Intelligence confirms the outbreak of hostilities between global powers. The city of Las Vegas is considered a potential target for enemy action. Take immediate shelter. This is not a drill. It felt like the room had been drained of oxygen. A few people muttered in disbelief. Others just stared, their eyes wide, hands frozen in mid-motion. My own thoughts were a tangle: disbelief, fear, an urge to run, and the sick weight of knowing there was nowhere truly safe to run to. I glanced toward the large windows. The strip's skyline shimmered in the distance, still bright even in daylight. But the sight didn't comfort me. Not when I realized those towers, those lights, were exactly why we were on that list. Phones started buzzing wildly. Alerts, calls from family, messages that loaded half a sentence before service cut out. Then nothing. No signal. No internet. Our radios auto-switched to the emergency frequency, repeating the same chilling words on a loop. Some people rushed toward the exits, hoping to get home. Others stayed, frozen in place. My mind kept going to my family. Where were they? Were they hearing the same message right now? I stepped outside for just a moment, needing air. The sky was impossibly blue, but there was a heaviness in it, as if even the desert sun couldn't burn through the dread. Sirens wailed in the distance, not the short bursts for accidents or fires, but the long rising cry of civil defense alarms, the kind you hear in old war footage. I realized then that Las Vegas, the city that never sleeps, the city of noise and light, had fallen eerily silent. And in that silence, one truth hit harder than anything else. World War III had just begun, and we were already in its shadow. They didn't give us much of a choice. Security personnel moved through the terminal like a silent tide, guiding people towards stairwells and service elevators that most of us had never noticed before. Their expressions were sharp, focused, no room for argument, no time for hesitation. One of them, a tall man with a radio strapped to his vest, caught my arm as I lingered near the gate. "You need to come with us now. The shelter's below the airport." I wanted to protest. I wanted to tell him I couldn't leave yet, that I had to find my family, but before I could speak, he must have read it on my face. "They'll be taken care of," he said firmly, as if rehearsed. "Evacuation teams are working the strip and the suburbs. If they can't move them out, they'll be sheltered in another secure location underground." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But belief is a fragile thing when you have no way to confirm it. As they led us down into the guts of McCarran, the familiar hum of the terminal faded, replaced by the hollow echo of our footsteps on concrete. The air grew cooler, heavier. The smell of jet fuel gave way to dust and metal, the scent of spaces that weren't meant for the public eye. We passed through a set of blast doors that groaned as they closed behind us. The sound reverberated through my chest, a metallic finality that felt too much like being buried alive. Inside, the bunker stretched farther than I expected. Low ceilings, rows of cots, stacks of crates stamped with military markings. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a cold, sterile glow. I sat on one of the cots, my hands clasped so tightly they hurt. I tried to picture my family, my wife, my kids, maybe already underground somewhere, maybe still above ground, caught in the chaos. I thought about their faces, their voices. I thought about the possibility that I might never see them again. Around me, others were settling in with the same haunted look. Some stared at the floor. Others whispered prayers. The air was thick with the weight of unspoken fears. The man who had brought me down passed by again, checking on people. I caught his sleeve. "You'll let me know if you hear anything about my family?" His eyes met mine, steady but not unkind. "If there's news, you'll get it. For now, you're safe here. That's all we can promise." Safe. The word felt hollow. I wasn't sure what safe meant anymore. Somewhere above us, the world was unraveling. Down here, all I could do was wait, and hope that promise wasn't just another casualty of the war. The bunker's stale air felt heavier than ever. Every breath was thick with dread as the emergency radio crackled to life. The static hissed for a moment before a voice, tense, urgent, cut through the silence. This is the Southern Command Operations Center. Confirmed inbound ballistic missile trajectories detected targeting Las Vegas. Estimated time to impact, approximately 60 minutes. All personnel are advised to prepare for immediate fallout protocols. A collective hush fell over the room. The words echoed in my mind like thunder. Ballistic missiles. Dozens of them, barreling toward the city I'd just left behind. The voice continued, listing the missile count. More than 30 warheads detected, flying on calculated paths of destruction. The screens lining the bunker's walls flickered to life, showing blinking dots converging ominously on our location. Around me, people gripped each other's hands, faces pale and eyes wide. I could feel the cold sweat beating at my temples, my heart hammering painfully against my ribs. Time slowed, stretched thin with every tick of the clock. Outside, I imagined the once vibrant strip, now shadowed by an invisible storm of fire and metal. There was no time left for hope, only preparation. Shelter protocols were ordered, double sealing doors, rationing water, turning off non-essential systems to preserve power. The commanding officer's voice grew steady, professional, but beneath the calm was an unmistakable edge of desperation. This is not a test. This is the reality we face. Stay calm. Follow instructions. Survive. I sank to the floor, trying to steady my breathing, trying to steel myself for what was coming. Every second brought us closer to the unknown, to a moment that could erase everything. And in the silence between the radio broadcasts, I thought once more of my family. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere was electric with tension. The dull hum of machinery mingled with hurried footsteps and urgent whispers. Every face was drawn tight with anxiety, eyes flicking nervously toward the radio, hanging on every word from the command center above. Orders came swift and clear. Seal all blast doors, double-check air filtration systems, ration water and food supplies, and ensure everyone remained calm but ready. Staff moved quickly, moving crates of emergency gear, distributing masks, and securing communication lines. The cold concrete walls seemed to close in, amplifying the fear that we were trapped in a steel cage waiting for the inevitable. I caught my reflection in a dark window, pale, wide-eyed, a man clinging to the fragile hope of survival. Above ground, the city was a frantic storm of activity. Military convoys roared down the streets, their headlights slicing through the dust-filled air. Soldiers hurriedly set up mobile missile defense systems, layers of radar and missile interceptors, desperately trying to create a shield over the neon-lit desert oasis. Barricades went up around key infrastructure, power plants, hospitals, communication hubs. Crews scrambled to reinforce buildings with sandbags and steel plates, hoping to blunt the impact of any stray explosions or debris. Emergency sirens wailed continuously, urging civilians to seek shelter immediately. In neighborhoods, families gathered in basements and underground garages, clutching what few belongings they could carry. Back in the bunker, a crackling radio broadcast offered grim updates. Some missiles had been intercepted, but many were still closing in at terrifying speed. The strain was palpable. Whispers of prayers mixed with the sharp commands of officers keeping order. Time seemed to stretch and compress all at once, each moment heavy with the knowledge that this was the last calm before the storm. I looked around at the faces around me, strangers turned companions by circumstance, each of us holding on to whatever courage we could find. Outside, the city I loved was bracing itself for destruction, and below, we waited. The bunker shook violently, like the earth itself was convulsing beneath us. A deep, thunderous roar filled the air, a sound so overwhelming it seemed to penetrate every bone and muscle. Dust and small debris rained down from the ceiling as the massive blast doors vibrated under the force of shock waves pounding the ground above. The rumble was endless, a relentless pounding that echoed in my chest, threatening to tear apart whatever fragile calm I had left. I instinctively grabbed the edge of a cold metal table, knuckles white, trying to ground myself amid the chaos. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Around me, faces were tense, some silent, gripping whatever they could hold. Others whispered prayers or murmured frantic pleas. The air was thick with fear and disbelief. Outside, the world was exploding in a fury of fire and destruction. The emergency radio crackled wildly, bursts of static tearing through the words of commanders issuing urgent orders. All personnel, brace for impact. Repeat, brace for impact. The voices were calm but strained, barely holding it together as the devastation unfolded. Each explosion was like a hammer blow, shaking the bunker's steel walls as if trying to break through. The lights flickered but stubbornly stayed lit, casting long, flickering shadows on the anxious faces around me. Some people closed their eyes, biting their lips to hold back panic. Others stared wide-eyed, frozen in place by the enormity of what was happening. I struggled to slow my breathing, to stay steady, even as every nerve screamed in terror. My mind raced to my family. Where were they? Were they safe? Were they huddled in a basement somewhere? Or already sealed inside a bunker like me? The uncertainty was a poison, gnawing at my thoughts. The roar above slowly began to fade, replaced by a haunting silence so thick it felt like the calm before another storm. Then came the muffled sounds, distant crashes as buildings crumbled, the snap and crackle of fires spreading unchecked through the city, the alarms still screaming their desperate warnings. The Strip, once alive with neon and music, was now a shattered ghost of its former self. Voices returned on the radio, reporting casualty estimates, damage to infrastructure, and the status of emergency teams moving into action. Miraculously, some missile interceptors had worked, but many had found their targets. Power grids were down, water lines broken, and fires raged in multiple sectors. The city was bleeding, but the fight wasn't over. In that underground room, surrounded by strangers, I felt an unexpected flicker of hope. Despite the destruction, emergency crews were already mobilizing. Communication channels struggled to stay alive, and somewhere in the darkness, humanity was refusing to give in. The war had come home. It was raw, brutal, and terrifyingly real. But beneath that concrete bunker, with only the hum of machinery and crackling radios for company, we were alive. And for now, that was everything. Two hours after the last explosion, the bunker doors slowly creaked open, flooding the stale underground air with the harsh light of a battered Las Vegas skyline. Soldiers in tactical gear moved swiftly and efficiently through the narrow corridors, their voices calm but commanding as they directed us toward the exits. "Stay close. Follow instructions. Keep moving," one of them ordered, his eyes scanning the group to make sure no one lagged behind. The weight of silence was broken by the steady rhythm of boots on concrete, punctuated by the distant rumble of emergency vehicles and the faint crackle of radios. Outside, the city was a chaotic maze of rubble and smoke, but the soldiers moved with purpose, guiding us through streets scorched by fire and lined with debris. We were being escorted to designated safe zones, secured areas equipped with medical tents, food supplies, and communication centers. These zones were established as temporary havens, places where families could reunite and survivors could gather strength before the uncertain road ahead. I clutched my coat tightly, my eyes searching every face in the crowd for a glimpse of my family. Fear and hope battled inside me with every step, but the presence of the military, organized, disciplined, was a fragile comfort in the chaos. At one checkpoint, a soldier handed out water bottles and asked for names and last known locations of loved ones. I gave them what little information I had, my voice shaking but determined. Evacuation teams are still working the outer districts, he assured me. If they're not here yet, they'll be brought in as soon as it's safe. The convoy moved on, a long line of survivors escorted under watchful eyes. Around us, the city groaned. Distant explosions, collapsing structures, and the ever-present haze of smoke reminding us of the destruction left behind. Despite the devastation, the safe zones buzzed with cautious optimism. Strangers shared blankets and stories. Medical personnel treated wounds both visible and unseen. Radios relayed messages from other shelters and command centers, stitching together a fragile web of communication. As we settled into the safe zone, I clung to the hope that soon I'd hear the voices I longed for. My family, alive and waiting. Until then, all I could do was wait, watch, and prepare for whatever came next. Time dragged on like a slow tide, each minute stretching longer than the last. The safe zone buzzed with restless energy, whispered conversations, shifting footsteps, the low murmur of radios catching stray transmissions. But my mind was a storm of anxiety. I paced near the entrance of the tent, heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. Every figure that stepped into the dusty clearing made me hold my breath, only to feel the weight of disappointment when they passed by without recognition. My hands trembled as I clutched the worn photo of my wife and our 2 children, their faces frozen in happier times. The smoke-stained air carried a faint scent of burnt wood and dust, mixing with the sweat of survivors and the sterile tang of medical supplies. I wasn't sure how long I had been waiting. Time lost all meaning here, when suddenly, movement caught my eye. At the edge of the camp, a group approached, flanked by a pair of uniformed soldiers. My heart leapt. Through the haze of dust and smoke, I saw her, my wife, her hair tousled and face smudged with grime, but unmistakably her. Behind her, our 2 children followed closely, eyes wide but alive. They looked tired, a little shaken, coated with the city's dust, but safe. I couldn't stop myself. I dropped the photo and ran. Their eyes met mine, and for a moment, the chaos around us vanished. The world was reduced to that single heartbeat, the reunion I had prayed for. Tears welled up as I embraced them, feeling the weight of relief and overwhelming love. The children clung to me, and I could hear the soft sobs of my wife as we held each other tightly. Around us, the camp seemed to fade away. The fires, the distant sounds of destruction, the uncertainty of what lay ahead. In that instant, nothing else mattered but the fact that we were together. For the first time since the bombs fell, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. The safe zone fell silent as the emergency broadcast began. The flickering screen in the central tent came alive, displaying the President of the United States, his face grave, eyes steely with resolve. My fellow Americans, his voice rang out, steady and firm. Today our nation faces an unprecedented attack. These cowardly strikes on Las Vegas and other cities are acts of aggression against not only our soil, but our very way of life. He paused, the weight of his words sinking deep into every listener's heart. To those who have launched these missiles, know this: you have awakened a sleeping giant. The United States will not be broken. We will respond with the full force of our might, and every person who dares to threaten our freedom will face the consequences. The crowd listened intently, the President's tone both a warning and a promise. We mourn the lives lost and the destruction wrought, but our spirit is unyielding. This war tests us, but it also unites us. We stand together, civilians, military, and government, as one unbreakable force. He looked directly into the camera, eyes burning with conviction. Let this be clear to all enemies of freedom. Whoever thought they could bring destruction to our shores and escape unscathed will soon learn the true meaning of American resilience and justice. The broadcast ended with the national anthem playing softly in the background, a somber yet defiant note echoing through the camp. Around me, I felt a surge of pride mingled with a fierce determination. The President's words weren't just rhetoric. They were a call to action. A call to protect our homes, our families, and our country. That night, the message echoed in my mind. It became the spark that lit a fire inside me. The reason I would fight. The reason I would stand. Because no matter what lay ahead, we would not fall. The dawn broke cold and quiet over the battered city. After a restless night filled with swirling thoughts and restless dreams, I made my decision. I couldn't stand idly by while the world around me burned. The destruction, the fear, the endless uncertainty, it all fueled a fire within me. My skills, years spent as a mechanic working with helicopters and military aircraft, weren't just knowledge to be buried beneath rubble. They were a weapon, a way to fight back and protect what remained of my world. By morning, I found myself standing again in the recruitment tent, the scent of diesel and sweat hanging in the air. The faces around me were grim but determined, strangers brought together by a shared purpose. When it was my turn, I spoke clearly, explaining my background, the years I had spent maintaining drones, helicopters, and fighter jets. The recruiter listened intently, nodding with appreciation. "We need people like you," he said. "Every aircraft that stays operational is a lifeline. Your skills will make a difference." Signing the papers felt like a crossing of a threshold. No turning back now. Fear mingled with a growing resolve, a commitment to stand and fight, not just for myself, but for my family, my city, and my country. As I left the tent, the weight of the uniform waiting for me felt both heavy and empowering. I was no longer just a survivor of the attack. I was becoming part of the response, part of the defense. That morning, the first steps of a new chapter began, one where every wrench turned and every engine started could be a step closer to survival. The first days of training were grueling, a test not only of body, but of spirit. The constant drills, the technical briefings, and the endless hours spent mastering the machines that kept us alive all demanded everything I had. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, I felt something stronger growing inside me. These attacks, brutal, devastating, had done something unexpected. They had forged a new bond among us, a unity stronger than any before. Strangers became brothers and sisters in arms, each of us driven by the same fierce determination to protect our homeland. In the mess hall, amid the clatter of trays and low conversations, I heard stories of loss and courage, of neighbors helping neighbors, and communities rising from the ashes. It was clear. This was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming our future. Our instructors reminded us daily that the strength of this nation came not from its weapons or technology alone, but from its people. The resilience, the grit, and the unwavering spirit of Americans had always been our greatest defense. As I tightened the screws on a drone's rotor blade, I felt pride in my work. Pride that, in some small way, I was contributing to that collective strength. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but so was the hope that came with it. Outside the training grounds, the country was healing. News reports showed communities rebuilding, rescue teams working tirelessly, and a nation rallying behind its defenders. The war had tested us, but it had also shown us who we truly were. And as I looked around at my fellow trainees, faces weary but unbroken, I knew this was just the beginning. Together, united as one, we would face whatever came next. because this was our home, our country, our fight. The air was thick with anticipation, heavy as the night pressed down on the battered landscape. Across the nation, people waited. Soldiers, civilians, survivors, all bound by the same fierce determination. Tonight would change everything. The emergency broadcast crackled through every radio, every screen, every speaker still standing amidst the ruins. The president appeared once more, his face lined with fatigue but eyes blazing with resolve. My fellow Americans and citizens of the world, his voice echoed, steady and unyielding. After the cowardly attacks that sought to shatter our spirit, the United States stands ready to deliver a response unlike any in history. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle like a storm on every listener's soul. In the coming hours, our forces will launch the largest coordinated strike ever undertaken on this planet. This is not just a retaliation, it is a declaration. A declaration that any who threaten the freedom and safety of our people will face total and irrevocable defeat. The broadcast showed glimpses of fleets assembling, aircraft carriers slicing through dark oceans, squadrons of drones humming to life, missile silos primed and ready. This is the moment our enemies will understand the true meaning of American resolve. Those who believed they could bring destruction upon us and escape unscathed will be erased from the map. He looked directly into the camera, voice ringing with unshakable conviction. To every American, hold fast. To every ally, stand with us. To those who dare threaten peace, your time is over. The broadcast ended, leaving a charged silence across the land. Around me, I felt the same storm of emotions: fear, pride, hope, and a burning determination to stand firm in the face of darkness. As the clock ticked toward the strike, I knew this was more than a battle. It was a turning point for humanity, a moment where we would either fall or rise together. And whatever happened, one truth was clear. America would not go quietly into the night. We would fight, we would endure, and we would prevail. Tonight, the world would witness the strength of a nation united, a final stand that would echo through history.